Digimon Adventure 02, or 2 as I will call it from here on out, is an interesting season. After the event of the first season, the writing staff started fighting over where they wanted to take this new season, mainly because Adventure 2 had two head writers with two different styles. Genki Yoshimura and Atsushi Maekawa. Maekawa's stories tended to be driven towards lighter narratives, while Yoshimura's drove towards darker ones. Most of the time they ended up fighting over their vision, which led to a lot of filler episodes. Now, at some point during the production of Adventure 2, Satoru Nishizono, the head writer for Adventure, left because he didn't want to see a sequel for Adventure. On top of that, a good portion of the writing staff almost quit because of executive meddling. On a quick side note, I do hate when this is executive meddling in media, as it can easily take away from whatever show it's in. Sometimes it works out for the better, but most of the time I hear about it, things tend to go south for the show, movie, game, whatever. At least the executive meddling in Adventure 2 gave us tamers. Now there is more, but instead of front-loading this video, I'm going to talk about some of the other problems as we get to them. So this season begins with TK narrating what the Digidestined that won't be part of the main cast are up to, and after the new theme we meet Ken, the Digimon Emperor, as he enslaving Digimon with the help of the Dark Rings. We see TK heading out for school on his first day, where he meets the new cast members Yoli and Cody. As they make it to school, TK spots Davis, the last of our cast of human characters. At first, TK thinks Davis is Tai. Yeah, Davis looks nothing like Tai. He has goggles and that's it. I mean, they don't even have matching hair color. So I guess we should talk about our new characters. Davis was created much like the season as a whole by executive meddling. You see, they wanted Tai, but from what I can tell, they didn't want to use Tai, so they created a new one that doesn't get much character development, as the higher-ups apparently wanted a static main character. I can only assume the decision was made so that the viewer can put themselves in the shoes of the main character. Because of all of that, Davis becomes a more bland character. He likes soccer and doesn't think much through. Has an obvious crush on Kari despite her showing little to no interest. But he has a heart of gold despite oftentimes being a jerk to his friends, and by friends I mean TK.
Okay, if it's tails, I rescue Kari. If it's heads, you get to go. Tails! And that you... a coin that has tails on both sides.
The plot gets started as we see Agumon call out to Tai after being attacked by the Digimon Emperor. Back in the real world, TK meets with Kari in class, and we switch back to the digital world where Tai meets up with some of the older Digimon and sends a message to the old team. Back in the real world, TK and Kari are catching up after class when Davis runs up and demands to know how TK knows Kari. Yoli appears right after to give Kari Tai's message, as she is the one that received it. They rush to the computer room where they run into Izzy, who also received Tai's message. Back in the digital world, Tai comes across the Digi-Egg of Courage and releases 3 Digivices that become Davis, Yoli's, and Cody's Digivices, and they're key to the digital world. So Davis, Kari, and TK dive into the digital world. Izzy is about to follow when Yoli and Cody return to the computer lab, and Izzy panics trying to hide the digital world from the two. Now there is an innate problem with this scene right here. The latter half of Season 1 happened. The world knows about the Digimon as they saw the events that transpired 3 years earlier. I'm not counting Children's War Game, as that mostly happened online and could be perceived as a stunt more easily than the sky ripping open to another world. The main problem is they hid the existence of the Digimon until they no longer had the option. However, if there was something wrong and they needed to help someone, they wouldn't hesitate to act, even if none of that was true. I don't think for a second that if Izzy had the chance to go see Tentomon again after 3 years, that he would hesitate to go see his friend. Especially because if Yoli and Cody saw Izzy enter the digital world, they could either follow him with their Digivices that we have already seen them obtain, or when everyone returned, they would just convince the two to keep quiet about it. So they enter the digital world, and Davis ends up with a new set of clothes, and it gets eventually explained why Davis, Yoli, and Cody end up with new clothes being a subconscious wish. Honestly, I wouldn't have a problem with this if they either went all the way with every one of our main casts getting new clothes, but they don't. I mean, their options would be don't make more character models, which would have been cheaper, or make 2 extra character models for TK and Kari, possibly calling back to their Season 1 outfits in the digital world. So as Kari and TK try and find Tai, Davis gets swarmed by Numamon. So they continue walking and answering Davis's questions about the digital world when they come across Tai, and Kari and TK get to reunite with their Digimon. It's a nice moment as the characters do come across as genuinely happy to see their old friends. Also, Tai is confused as to why Davis is here. Upon Kari noticing that Gaiamon's tail ring is missing, Gaiamon explains what has been happening, and that they can't digivolve thanks to the Digimon Emperor. Davis shows his Digivice, and I swear if the animation budget for this season was better, Gaiamon would have attacked Davis upon seeing it. So we learned that the Digimon You know what, I'm just going to call him Ken. We learn that Ken thinks this is all just a game, and he believes that the digital world is something that belongs to only him. We'll get more into his ideology later, but for now he sends a Monochromon after the new Digidestin. TK and Kari try and lift the egg with Ty's crest. After both fail to do so, Davis tries lifting the egg and unleashes Vmon. Now, Vmon is a hyperactive Digimon that acts very much like Davis. I'm not a big fan of Vmon's voice as he speaks kind of like a gremlin, and it can get annoying to listen to after a while. Now, I do like his design, and while he does act like a more hyperactive Davis because he doesn't have a crush on members of the cast getting in the way, he does tend to be less annoying as he doesn't have much dialogue standing around impressing women. So they get attacked by Monochromon, and Davis activates the Digi-Egg, allowing Vmon to digivolve to Flamedramon through a new style of evolution. Now, I like Flamedramon's design. It's one of the few Digi-Armor evolutions that I actually like the design of. The other one is Magnamon. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the evolutions. I like the idea, but many of the designs of the main cast's Digimon I just don't like. They don't appeal to me very well. So Ken learns about the Digi-Armor evolution, and Flamedramon frees Monochromon from control to the tune of Run Around. I know I didn't talk about the music of the dub in the last video, where midway through the series they started blasting Hey Digimon every time they got into a fight, which could harm the tension as the upbeat music went against the tone. I didn't have a problem with the music being there. I did have a slight problem with the music just being one song. While it got overplayed in the dub, Season 2 has the advantage of having more of Digimon the movie's soundtrack available. And the movie does have a good soundtrack. The only real problem with it is the animation budget wasn't big enough for the fast-paced music. So Ty gives Davis his goggles, and we learn that the digital world is safe at night. The Digidestin returns to the human world, ending the first episode. So let's talk about one of the biggest problems this season has. It's not that they have Davis, it's that he's the leader. It wouldn't be a problem if TK and Kari weren't here, but because they are, it begs the question as to why they aren't the leader, as TK has the most experience in the digital world, with Kari being the second since the old team won't be joining them as much. The problem becomes, and we will see this when things start coming back from the first season, the season starts feeling hollow as TK and Kari are pushed to the side of the story. TK ends up having to confront Devimon again, and Kari's side story about the Dark Ocean is almost entirely ignored. Both things that could be interesting, but because of the constant fighting in the writer's room, interesting plots end up being replaced by what feels like filler. What makes this worse is that for the first 21 episodes, Davis barely grows as a character. So any episode where he's actively not becoming a better character makes the episode stand around others that we could have gotten just sting that much more. So the following episode has the previous cast discussing the new generation and Ken. The following morning, Izzy and Sora accompany the new team to the digital world while Ty distracts his old teacher, allowing the seven to enter unseen. So they come across their Digimon before being attacked by Sneemon, and once again, it's really nice to see the old team be really happy to see their old friends. Davis and Vmon get separated from the others and meets Ken for the first time. You know, I like Ken as an antagonist. He's smart enough to separate Davis from the rest of the team as he's the only one capable of posing a threat to him, and Ken steals Davis' Digivice immediately after chaining him to a cliff. The others come across the temple with the Digi-Eggs holding Izzy and Sora's crests. Yoli and Cody pick up the eggs, releasing their Digimon Armadillomon and Hawkmon. Yoli, not wanting to partner with Hawkmon and fight, has to be told the reason why she should fight, being because she has to, and the bond between Yoli and Hawkmon will grow strong, leading to them being friends forever. I'm only halfway into episode 2, and this is already the 5th or 6th time I'm stopping to talk about something that could have been done far better. If Yoli is going to be the character that doesn't want to fight and has to be reassured that she can do it, then we need to know more things about her first. The only thing I know about Yoli so far is that she's a nerd with no sense of fashion. So when you try to compare her to Mimi, who had to watch as the friends they fought alongside were killed, breaking finally when Ty and Matt fight each other, Yoli has nothing to justify the comparison. Mimi didn't want to fight because of the friends they lost. Yoli just doesn't want to fight. If you were going to compare her to one of the Digidestin from Season 1, you could have tried Sora, who broke down at the stress and worry of not being strong enough to save the world despite being one of the only people who could. And you know, the person whose crest was on the Digi-Egg Yoli just picked up. I mean, it wouldn't have been strong, but it would have been better. On top of that, the pep talk comes about 40 episodes too early, as Yoli, Cody, and Davis haven't been through anywhere near enough to justify this. So, Izzy asks Cody about his opinion so that they can justify giving Cody the Digi-Egg of Knowledge, and the new Digimon digivolve to their first armor forms. So as Ken tries to take control of Vmon, the others come in saving him and retrieve Davis' Digivice, allowing Vmon to digivolve. They free the Digimon and return to the real world alongside the Digimon of the main cast. In the third episode, we learn who Ken is and that Kari and TK left their Digimon at the school, despite their parents knowing about their Digimon's existence. Nothing against the season, but Kari and TK really should have just not bothered hiding their Digimon from their parents. Would have made things so much simpler. I mean, an Adventure tried, Tai and Kari's mother knows about Agumon and Garamon immediately.
They'd like you if they just got to know you.
Yeah!
So we get to learn a little bit about Cody as the youngest member of the team. He will be forced to prove himself because we need to rehash things from the previous season. The problem being, Cody is not the most interesting character because of how his character is executed. He's a soft-spoken kid that holds his deceased father's memory in high regard. He practices kendo with his grandfather and never wastes food. Cody tends to be the most selfless character of the new cast, putting others first and himself second. Now, when you break him down, his character is rather interesting, but his monotone delivery in the dub tends to make his character drag, and the insistence that the show puts on Cody to prove himself, despite not really needing to oftentimes, forces the more interesting plot points to fall to the wayside, because Cody is a kid that needs to be protected by everyone. Cody's character on paper is an interesting one, but in practice just wasn't executed well. So they introduced Ken and his talents, and thanks to the executive meddling on the American side of this season, Ken's talents are played up as a joke. When in the original season he's treated like a genius, the dub portrays him as an average kid with mediocre talents. There's a Tumblr account that lists the differences between dub and sub for each season. I'll put a link in the description below if I remember to. So the new team enters the digital world, and we see Ken walking down the streets, and we get to see the disdain Ken has for life. In the original dub, after a dog comes up to him, he kicks it, and in the English dub, he just tells him to leave him alone. He returns home, blows off his mother, and heads to the digital world, where he whips and kicks Digimon. Yes, it's shown. We get to watch as he whips and kicks a Lucmon. They cut away for a few frames as he kicks a Lucmon, but we get to see his foot connect with a Lucmon, begging the question as to why you cut out Ken kicking the dog in the first place. I mean, I know it's because they wouldn't let Digimon show the kids actually doing anything they could do in real life. It's why we never see Matt and Tai actually land a punch, as they use careful editing to imply the hit. But it's not even close here. So Ken has two Lucmon fight each other as three Gatsumon watch, with two of them getting captured. We also see Wormmon questioning Ken, showing he isn't entirely on board with what Ken is doing. The new team finally enters the digital world, and we get a signal from their Digivices, leading them to two more Digi-Eggs. Along the way, they come across a hologram of Ken, where he states that only perfect human beings can be Digi-destined, and the digital world thus only belongs to him. Ken attacks them with a Tyrannomon, and once he starts losing, he brings in four more. So as the new Digimon are fighting, Kari, TK, Cody, Garamon, and Patamon escape to find the two new Digi-Eggs belonging to Kari and TK. So Kari and TK get their Digi-Eggs, allowing their Digimon to Digivolve to...
Digimon, you're beautiful, but the best part is now that you can fly, we don't have to walk anymore.
Okay, Pegasusmon isn't that bad looking, but I do not like Nefertimon. She's a Sphinx, the problem being her face never changes, and the way her face is designed just comes off as uncanny, because her mouth never moves and she has no eyes, so she comes off as an unfinished character every time she appears. So they save the others, giving more credence that Kari or TK should have been the leader of the season, and back in the real world, the team discusses the events of the last 3 days. The following episode opens with the new team and Tai freeing Digimon from Ken's control, and Garamon spots the first Black Spire, which blocks Digimon and acts as radio towers for his Digivice, spreading the signal to the black rings that he uses to control the Digimon he enslaves. In the real world, we see the team brought back some of the Digimon they rescued, and Izzy borrows Ioli's Digivice in hopes to find a way for the older Digivices to open the gate to the digital world. Back in the digital world, we see Garamon, who has been captured by Ken, create a jailbreak and gets attacked shortly after by a red Vegemon and thrown off a cliff. Back in the human world, we see TK and Matt talking when we meet Davis' older sister. They get called by Ioli, and back in the school, everyone except for Ioli enters the digital world, as Izzy still has her Digivice. So Gabumon explains what happened, and we see as Davis is kicked out of the leader position by Matt rather quickly, as they don't want to rush in and risk someone getting hurt. They sneak in pretending to be possessed by Ken's ring, and once again freeing some of the captured Digimon, they make their way to the control spire. Once there, they get ambushed by Ken's forces, and don't do so well as they all get grabbed before they are capable of Digivolving. While beating Vmon, Red Vegemon destroys the tower, allowing Gabumon to Digivolve, and the animation team to reuse animation from Season 1. So the team learns that they can restore the power of Digivolution by destroying the towers, and after defeating the ambush, Tai, Izzy, and Ioli show up. So I know that the spires exist as a way to stop the team from being able to digivolve, and we later learned that the kids were forced to release their power of the crests in order to protect the digital world after the events of Season 1, as a way to justify not giving Gatomon and Patamon their ultimate forms too early. The problem with that being, allowing the older Digidestined to digivolve throughout the series and hold their evolutions could help keep Ken at bay. Once they evolved, they could have the power to keep Ken from erecting more spires and slow his progress. You also wouldn't have to worry about Anjawamon and Magna Anjamon because, as they would constantly be forced to return to their previous forms, they would always have to find and destroy a extra spire before evolving, which Ken would obviously reinforce as the series continued. It would be an easy explanation to keep the original cast out of the action as the new cast to progress to the next levels. I mean, Garurumon stays behind, but it would make more sense if Were Garurumon or Metal Garurumon stayed behind, as the Dark Rings won't work on stronger Digimon. So over the course of the next few episodes, we see Ken enslave more Digimon and place more spires, while the new team destroys and frees Digimon he enslaves, all while the new team partners up with their second counterpart from the first season. Cody also gets to show off more of his character as a more honor-bound character, pushing himself to his limits when the team meets up with Joe and Gomamon. While I disagree with Cody holding the Digi-Egg of knowledge, I do agree with him holding the Digi-Egg of reliability, /sincerity, /honesty. And this is good foreshadowing. Now, while they're taking out control spires, Ken switches plans as they start taking out many of the towers quickly. After a soccer game that he plays against Davis, he runs away to the digital world, increasing the time he spends putting up towers from a couple hours a day to every hour of every day. During this time, Ken decides to capture Greymon for his power and likely to harm the morale of the Digidestined, new and old. He attacks the team with Greymon, forcing him to digivolve wanting Metal Greymon, but ending up with Skull Greymon since he's forcing evolution. What doesn't go well for Ken is his Dark Rings don't work on powerful Digimon, and Skull Greymon destroys the control spire in the area and starts fighting Ken's forces before returning to Agumon and getting captured by Ken. Izzy learns that the territory Agumon was guarding was taken over, and upon finding out, Tai rushes to the digital world to save his friend. We also see when Yoli isn't up to fighting, Tai starts lashing out at the others while worried about Agumon. So Ken starts experimenting with his Dark Rings in order to control Skull Greymon. I will say, one thing I can't stand about this season is that they gave Skull Greymon a voice instead of growling noises like in the original season. Especially with the voice they gave him, Skull Greymon is far less intimidating. Dark Shot! So Ken creates a new design. Now instead of having the Dark Ring, he has a Dark Spiral, and while he's creating it, Wormmon frees Agumon. Agumon escapes, meeting up with the group, and as they are leaving, Ken finds them and kidnaps Agumon by attaching his new Dark Spiral to Agumon's arm. He forces Agumon to digivolve to Blue Metal Greymon, and with the power of the Dark Spiral, he is capable of controlling Metal Greymon. You know, the Dark Rings and Dark Spirals are essentially the same thing as Black Gears from Season 1, just a little more powerful. They never try and use a Digivice to destroy the rings, spirals, or spires. Just saying, even if the Digivice from Season 1 didn't work, the D3s might have destroyed them. So after Ken leaves with Metal Greymon, Yoli shows up alongside Matt, and while drowning in his own sorrow, Matt helps Tai. Ah yes, violence, the true mark of friendship. As they search for Metal Greymon and Ken, Tenomon stops by to tell them that they found Ken, and Matt sends Tenomon to find Garurumon. They also come across the Digi-Egg of Friendship. They get attacked by a Flymon and Patamon gets grabbed. As they chase after him, Ken shows up threatening to enslave Patamon, and Garurumon shows up at the last second saving Patamon. They start fighting Metal Greymon, trying to destroy the Dark Spiral, and upon understanding why they are so willing to fight Metal Greymon, Davis obtains the Digi-Egg of Friendship, allowing Vmon to digivolve to Raidromon. They destroy the Dark Spiral, returning Metal Greymon to Agumon. Ken flees the battle, planning on strengthening the Dark Spirals. Back in the human world, Izzy asks Tenomon to find Ken. So while Ken upgrades his Dark Spirals, the team destroys more spires and finds the other two Digi-Eggs of Sincerity / Purity and Reliability. There are episodes that I could talk about, like the Dark Ocean episode, that I'm not going to talk about much, as it's mostly forgotten as Chiaki Konaka was the one writing the episode, and when he transitions to Tamers after almost leaving the studio, the rest of the writers just ignored the plotline, leaving it mostly unused for the rest of the series, beyond one episode and a few brief mentions near the end, leaving what could be a good arc as little more than a filler episode. We also learned that there are more Digidestined all across the world, as Mimi has a friend with a Digivice. Eventually, the cast, old and new, decide that they need to enter the digital world and not return until they are able to defeat Ken. They learn how from an old friend, as Wizardmon returns to tell Gatomon they must save Ken. Now, in order for the kids to stop Ken without having to return, they cover for their parents by having the old team go camping. In the digital world, Yoli starts going more than a little crazy, and they discover the Ken's base can move. Also, when Hawkmon gets hurt and Yoli starts crying over him, I feel nothing because she loses her mind over nothing. Also, Kari stays behind to reassure Yoli and state that she did the same thing the first time round, which is wrong. Kari didn't put anyone else in danger because she was charging headfirst into battle. She risked her own life because they needed to move and she didn't want to be a burden to the others, especially when their team was fractured as it was. Kari got sick and had no control over her situation. She could only slow them down so she could recover. Yoli lost her mind and jumped into a hole with a Dokugamon because I can only assume she was tripping on something she found in the digital world. On top of that, when she's upset, it doesn't come off as genuine because they show two drastically different Yolis. One that is in line with the rest of the series, being the one not wanting to cause trouble. And the one that jumps off a cliff, climbed a spider Spider-Man style, and dove into a hole with a giant poisonous spider. So we see Ken creating an abomination, and we get an explanation as to why Yoli acted as she did. The problem now being she wanted to prove her own strength despite it never being in question up to now. So in the following episode, TK and Cody sneak off to go after Ken, leaving Davis to protect Yoli and Kari, who immediately leave Davis behind. Cody comes across Ken's base underwater alongside an entrance right before Ken starts trying to draw power from what he calls the Dark Pool. Wormmon warns Ken that there's a strong evil coming from it, while TK keeps Kari and Yoli updated on the situation, and Cody explores the base now cut off from the others. Cody comes across some captured Digimon and Davis finds a way to the others. Ken's base emerges from the water and TK sneaks on board with Tentomon. He comes across Cody, freeing the Digimon as Ken is exiting his base and comes across Devimon, all while TK watches. Ken steals some of Devimon's essence and he's told to beware the darkness. So this episode, this moment right here is the number one reason as to why TK should have been the leader of the team. Since he has a past with Devimon, being forced to fight a Digimon created from the essence of Devimon's darkness would show how far he's come since the first season, especially because it would wrap up the first arc of Adventure and Adventure 2. You have to remember, Angemon gave his life to protect everyone, using every ounce of power he had to vanquish Devimon. Even if it couldn't be explored in the first season, this left a deep emotional scar on TK. Devimon is the reason why he lost Patamon, his best friend. If he was leading the fight, he could eventually call upon his crest in one last stand defying the spires and towers, allowing Patamon to digivolve to Angemon or Magna Angemon, bringing it full circle and being the first to reach Ultimate instead of the last one like Season 1. I'm not saying exploring these ideas would be better, I'm just saying it would be more interesting. It would also make it far more satisfying than it is when TK confronts Ken soon after.
When you can't think of anything to say, do you always resort to fighting? That's your problem. You don't know when to talk and when to fight. Now's a good time to talk. On the other hand, it's also a good time to fight.
It's the simple fact that TK manages to shatter Ken's confidence just by talking calmly and not backing down. If he was the leader, this could have been built up better as a way to show how vastly different the two rivals are. But instead of TK being the leader and rival to Ken, we have Davis, who never really gets this moment. I mean, no. Davis as a character couldn't pull this off, at least not for a very long time. It would require them to give Davis many smaller moments of character building that he just didn't get due to the constant infighting in the writing room. Also, it would have made this far more satisfying too. So, the team outside fights Chimeramon while TK fights Ken. When TK learns about Chimeramon, he and Patamon leave to help their friends while Ken regroups. So, we see Frankenstein and his monster terrorizing the digital world, erecting more of his control spires, while the team watches it planning their next move, and Cody and Izzy come up with a plan to stop Ken's base. We also see that Devimon's essence is starting to affect Ken. They set fire to Ken's base that's made of stone, distracting Ken so the others can sneak aboard. They get spotted rather quickly, and Ken sends a group of Bakumon and Chimeramon. As they start losing, their Digimon return to their real-world states, and upon seeing this, Wormmon compares their in-training forms to human babies, and Ken calls off Chimeramon as the comparison strikes him. Ken rushes down to the team, and Chimeramon leaves no longer under Ken's control. Wormmon helps Davis, hoping to help Ken by leading Davis to the engine room and the Digi-Egg of Kindness? Miracles? It shows Ken's crest of kindness, but uses the design for the Digi-Egg of Miracles. Also, despite being the strongest armor evolution in the show, they use Magnamon once in the show and once in Hurricane Touchdown. I mean, I'm glad they don't use a broken character all the time, but you can use the broken character every once in a while. So they use Magnamon to defeat Chimeramon and destroy Ken's base. Again, I will say, I would have rather had Magna Angemon show up to defeat Chimeramon. I mean, they're both broken characters, might as well have the one that defeated Mega Digimon and will eventually go on to almost defeat another Mega later. With the destruction of Ken's base, the kids flee as Magnamon continues fighting Chimeramon, and we learn a little bit about Ken's past as Wormmon sacrifices himself to give Magnamon the strength to keep fighting. After the fight, Davis finds Ken's crest, and the team confronts Ken, telling him that the Digimon are alive. Upon realizing that the Digimon are living beings, Ken has a meltdown, throwing away his Emperor clothing just in time to regain the power of his crest and watch Wormmon die. We then learn about Ken's brother who died at some point in the past. Davis offers to help Ken, but he wanders off into the desert alone. The kids return to the human world just in time for Davis' sister to show up and kidnap Matt. While not my favorite group of episodes, the Digimon Emperor arc really is the best story arc of the season, at least in my opinion. The reason why I like this arc is because of Ken. This is the first time that Digidestined had to face an enemy that was human, which comes with a lot more moral problems other than is Digimon good or bad, which many seasons don't do. Tamers, my favorite season, would be the first to actually toy with the morality of the fight with the Devas. I can't remember Frontier because I've only been able to sit through it all the way once, and Data Squad kind of did and kind of didn't from what I remember. Fusion did toy with it a few times with some characters. Reapmon stands out as one of them, which is why I talked about it a while ago. However, while the morality of how to defeat Ken isn't really brought up, that doesn't change the fact that having him be a human does help set apart the first arc of Adventure 2 from the previous season. So since Ken has now given up on being the Digimon Emperor, the kids spend their time cleaning up the digital world. During this time, the new team will start digivolving to their champion form, starting with Vmon as Davis keeps trying to force Vmon to digivolve to impress Kari. We also learn about Ken's older brother Sam. His brother was the smarter one and taught Ken everything. However, because he was a smart one and constantly praised by everyone, their parents would praise Sam and ignore Ken, leading to Ken's feelings of loneliness, also leading to him wanting Sam to disappear. One day, Sam's computer drops a Digivice next to them, and Sam takes it, telling Ken not to touch it. However, the Digivice was Ken's, not Sam's, so Ken was drawn to it, and once he picks it up, he was transported to the digital world, returning later getting disdain from Sam, who is more interested in himself than his brother, further isolating Ken from his family. After wishing his older brother would disappear, his brother ends up in an accident and passes away. Sometime later, when using his brother's old computer, he gets a message from the next big enemy, and is told he must live out Sam's life in the real world or go to the digital world with a Digivice. Now, Ken enters the Dark Ocean, being the second time it's used in the series, and upon dipping the Digivice into the water, it transforms into the D3. After a small interaction between his parents, Ken comes to the realization that he was trying to outdo his brother with his actions. Now, I want to take a moment to say Ken is my favorite new character this season, mostly because, as a younger brother myself, I can relate to the feeling of wanting to be better than my older brother. When I was younger, I had a drive to best my brother at everything. This helped me push myself to become the person I am today, though only slightly. I don't know when I stopped trying to be better at things than him, though I would bet it was somewhere between 6th and 10th grade, when I started looking at what I was doing, finding my problems, and trying to figure out how to fix them, instead of seeing something my brother was doing and copying that. While I was inspired in my art style, the way I write, and even the career I hope to have one day from others, I no longer look to be better than the people I look up to. If that does happen, then awesome, but when my goal was to be better than someone else, I personally was left unhappy with the overall product I was left with. And to be clear, I want to improve my skills and to be better at what I do. However, I have no interest to outdo anyone else on this or any platform, or any type of media. So Ken finally wakes up unable to recognize his parents because of his existential crisis. Later, he sits at his computer to find his Digivice and crest. He enters the digital world looking for Wormmon and ends up finding the primary village. He ends up getting told off by the Digimon there who still recognize him as the Digimon Emperor. So Ken forces himself to remember when he first entered the digital world where Wormmon tells him to be kind and gentle. He calls upon his crest, finding Wormmon's Digi-Egg. And back in the real world, Ken finally recognizes his parents, which leads into a sweet moment. In the following episode, we meet Arukenimon, who is one of the henchmen of the big enemy of the season. We also see the kids still helping to rebuild the digital world. They are also discussing whether Ken is playing with them or not. One thing I will give this season that the other seasons don't have is that the main cast doesn't immediately forgive Ken. Cody even saying that he can't ever forgive Ken. Back in the real world, we see the kids having some downtime with their Digimon, which I really appreciate seeing. In the digital world, as most of the kids are trying to figure out why they can't Digivolve again, Cody gets attacked by a Thunderballmon, and Armadillomon Digivolves during the fight. Cody gets saved by Stingmon, who we learn is Wormmon's champion form. Ken shows himself, leaving the others confused. Cody also notices the control spire still keeping them from digivolving is gone, and we learn that Ken and Wormmon are after Arukenimon. In the following episode, we see Davis talking to the others about recruiting Ken, and everyone has their reservations, TK being the only one willing to hear him out. It's actually interesting to have TK be the one willing to let Ken join alongside Davis. After all, it wouldn't be the first time he had an enemy switch sides. Gammon and Wizardmon were once the Digidestined's enemies, and TK also met up with Pumpmon and Gatsumon, so he knows his enemies can change better than the others. I do also like how Ken will have to prove he's changed instead of everyone just going along with it. So Davis meets up with Ken and asks him to join them. Ken, appreciating the offer, turns him down. TK, who has followed Davis, tells Patamon he believes Ken has changed and deserves a second chance, and we see Yoli questioning whether or not to give Ken a second chance. The next day, we see Mimi with a new hairstyle in the digital world, and Palmon comes across Arukenimon transforming a control spire into a Digimon. So Mimi calls for help, somehow yelling loud enough for all the kids to hear her an entire world away, and they come running to help. During the fight, Yoli and Davis fight over whether or not to destroy Golemon. Mimi ends up messaging Ken as Golemon defeats the Digimon, and as Golemon tries to destroy a dam to flood a town, Stingmon shows up, stopping Golemon. Palmon wakes up and reveals that Golemon is a Digimon created by a control spire. With the realization that Ken isn't killing innocent Digimon, Hawkmon digivolves to its champion form. After the battle, Ken apologizes to the team, claiming that he has nothing to do with Arukenimon, and after getting another offer to join the team, Ken declines, now with Yoli's forgiveness. So, as the kids clean up the digital world, Ken and Wormmon decide to destroy the control spires, and Arukenimon starts attacking the Digidestined with control spire Digimon. After defeating their second control spire Digimon, Izzy gets a weird reading from Ken's old base and predicts that it's having a meltdown and will explode if not dealt with. Davis tries to contact Ken, who is busy having a conversation with Arukenimon. Izzy ends up calling Ken and explains the situation, and as Ken makes his way to the digital world, Arukenimon makes herself known to the others by creating a new Digimon made up of multiple spires. Ken tries to fight on his own, and after Davis talks some sense into him, their Digimon DNA digivolve to Pyodramon. So while Pyodramon is fighting Okuamon, Ken and Davis rush to stop Ken's base from going nuclear. When inserting Ken's crest doesn't stop the explosion, they dive deeper into the base to its power source. As it grows closer to exploding, Pyodramon destroys Okuamon and arrives in time to destroy the base's power source without blowing up the base. Afterwards, Davis extends another hand to Ken, who is still unsure of himself, stating that he needs some time to think. The team resolves to keep an eye on Ken, and the next day Izzy explains DNA Digivolution to the team. We also get some retcon to the series as an excuse as to why Gatomon and Patamon can't digivolve to their ultimate forms. Which is stupid. The old team giving up the power of their crest shouldn't be possible because the power is a part of them that has been there since their childhood. It wasn't something given to them, but something innate that they had. This is wholly an excuse not to allow Gatomon and Patamon to be useful on their own. So Yoli tries to enter the digital world when Izzy's mother comes in with food. So in order to stop Arukenimon's plans before they can start, the kids start wiping out the control spires. Also, much like the first season, Davis knows more than he should. He is the first one to call Arukenimon by her name before anyone else, even Arukenimon. Which kind of ruins the reveal later on when she reveals who she is and they realize she's a Digimon, not a human. So Arukenimon tries to destroy the kids by overrunning them with insect-type Digimon, and when that fails, she tries to take them out on her own. As the kids start winning, they get blindsided by Mummymon, who helps Arukenimon escape. In the following episode, we see the kids cleaning up more control spires, and Arukenimon creates the best random character in the season, Black War Greymon. He very easily defeats champions, and Yoli goes to find Ken, who went off on his own after a failed plan by Davis and Yoli to get Ken and Cody to work together. She brings Ken back, and Arukenimon orders Black War Greymon to finish off the Digimon. Stingmon and XVmon DNA digivolve and start fighting, though he is nowhere near strong enough to defeat him, as Pyodramon is an ultimate fighting a Mega. Black War Greymon defeats the Digidestined and goes off searching for a stronger opponent to fight. I'm going to say this, and I doubt it'll be that controversial, but Black War Greymon is the only reason why I watch Adventure 2. He goes from someone searching for a fight to someone looking for a purpose for his existence, almost destroying the digital world in the process. Anyway, over the course of the next few episodes, the kids will DNA digivolve to the next level, starting with Kari and Yoli. During this time, we learn about the Destiny Stones that hold the digital world together, and Agumon meets Black War Greymon. After a long talk between the two about friendship and hearts, Black War Greymon senses the destruction of the Destiny Stone that the Digidestined are currently trying to protect, and goes off to destroy it. In the following episode, while Yoli is on a class trip, we get an interaction between Izzy and Ken, where Izzy pretty much states he's smarter than Ken.
I'm sure you've read it a dozen times. It's a bestseller in the school psychology department bookstore.
I can't believe I've never heard of that one. I feel so ashamed of myself.
Oh, Oh, don't worry. I've got an extra copy you can borrow. After all, we high IQ types gotta stick together.
In the original dub, it's a conversation about the mysterious email he received as a kid. On Yoli's side, she starts seeing the repercussions of Blackwater Greymon destroying the stones. The wall between the worlds starts disappearing as he destroys a second stone, appearing in Kyoto, only to Yoli, much like the Digimon appearing on the news in Season 1, only to the Digidestin. When Digimon slips through to the human world and Yoli notifies the others, Ken shows up with Stingmon and Hawkmon to stop Apemon from wreaking havoc and returns to the digital world. Right after Yoli meets one of Joe's brothers and Sora's father, he explains the connection between Kyoto and the digital world, giving us some lore about the series, mainly about the Digimon Sovereign, which gets their names in Tamers and not Adventure 2. So the Digimon return to the digital world after a fight with Musayamon. As Blackwater Greymon destroys the third stone, Azulonmon appears for a short time, and Blackwater Greymon sets his sight on drawing him out to fight. TK tells the others that they need to find the stones, and Cody starts questioning the person TK is as he shows his darker side again. The next day, the kids split up into two teams, being those who can DNA Digivolve together, and TK and Cody. Gabumon shows up telling TK and Cody that Blackwater Greymon has a heart, and points them in the direction of the next Destiny Stone. As Blackwater Greymon shows up to destroy the stone, the Pyodamon and Sylphimon hold him off for a short time, and TK and Cody appear before he can start destroying the stone. Patamon digivolves, and during the fight gets thrown at the Destiny Stone, which lights up, allowing Angemon to digivolve to Magna Angemon. He tries to use his Gate of Destiny to put an end to Blackwater Greymon, but is unable as Blackwater Greymon destroys the Destiny Stone, returning Magna Angemon to Patamon. Azulonmon appears again, fading in and out of existence, and Blackwater Greymon goes off to find the next stone. After another stone gets destroyed, TK states that they have to stop Blackwater Greymon, and Cody goes to talk to Matt about TK, and Matt explains to Cody the battle between Angemon and Devimon. The next day, while trying to protect the Destiny Stone, Cody stands between Blackwater Greymon and the stone, trying to reason with him. His plan fails, and Angemon shows up at the last second, saving Cody. Blackwater Greymon destroys the stone, leaving one stone left. Now, while trying to protect the next stone, TK and Cody activate their DNA evolution, getting Shakuamon. Now, I haven't seen every Digimon created, but Shakuamon might be one of the absolute worst designed ones of them all. I mean, he can barely move, little more than a statue that floats around. Also, like I stated with Nefertimon, his face is static. He's unable to emote in any way except through the tone of his voice, which is split between two voices. So Shakuamon is able to absorb and redirect Blackwater Greymon's Terror Destroyer, and he questions their motives. Since they don't answer, he decides he'll destroy the digital world in order to find his answer. The kids tries to protect the Destiny Stone using their Digivices, which summons Azulonmon. He questions Blackwater Greymon, and we learn that the Control Spire's purpose was to seal away the Sovereign and create instability in the digital world. Upon learning this knowledge, Blackwater Greymon attacks Arcanimon. Azulonmon stops Blackwater Greymon from killing her by telling him his existence has meaning and he must find his purpose on his own, to which he goes off on his own. Azulonmon gives us exposition about both seasons and sums up everything up to the end of the Digimon Emperor arc much faster than I could or did. Blackwater Greymon disappears into a portal in the sky, and Azulonmon plants seeds that will become the new Destiny Stones. He also talks about the power of light and hope. You know, it's incredible how similar Adventure 2 and the Kingdom Hearts series lore is to each other. 7 Destiny Stones that have holy energy, 7 princesses of light, creatures of darkness that corrupt even the purest of souls, and everything coming down between the powers of light and darkness. An incompetent villain that keeps trying to use those without hearts who actually do have hearts to complete their evil schemes. A digital world that the main character gets to go to. I mean, the only thing Digimon is missing is a super powerful sword made from the bond of light and darkness, and stupid and complicated time travel rules. Wait a minute.
And disrupting its continuity. There is only one way to avoid this grave fate. A tremendous sacrifice.
To you. What do you think she meant by a sacrifice?
A reboot.
What? A reboot?
Please tell me that's something you can eat.
So now that the digital world is almost safe, the kids continue cleaning up the control spires so Arcanimon can't create more Black Spire Digimon. After one time, Ken invites the team to a Christmas party, and they all accept. Back in the real world, we see Arcanimon and Mummymon have entered the real world, and we also get to meet the next villain, Arcanimon and Mummimon's leader, Maekawa. He investigated the Hidden View terrorist incident and warns TK's mother that the Digimon are returning. Back in the digital world, the new Digidestin are planning on surprising the old cast with their Digimon for Christmas. So that night during Matt's Christmas concerts, where they sped up the song he's singing that they wrote for the English dub, weird choice, We see Arukenimon and Mummymon outside with a control spire. They ruined the concert by attacking the old Digidestin with a Black Tyrannomon and a bunch of Bakumon. We see the town full of Digimon, and at Ken's party they're playing cards when Tai calls to tell them what's going on. The kids show up and destroy the control spire that's keeping the old cast from digivolving, and they start digivolving. While fighting, they start sending the Digimon back to the digital world, and eventually have to start DNA digivolving due to the stronger Digimon that start appearing. After sending them all back, they return to their homes and we see all the kids with their families. I'd like to point out that Izzy and Mimi didn't hide their Digimon. I doubt Tai would have, and that would mean Kari wouldn't hide Gatomon. Joe isn't likely to hide Gomon, and Sora is stated to have become best friends with her mother. So I ask, why has Kari and TK not told their parents about what's been going on this season? What was the point in those two hiding their Digimon in the events of the digital world? The rest of the cast? Whatever. They weren't part of the old team, so it doesn't matter. The next day, the kids learn that the control spires are appearing all over the world alongside gates to the digital world. They all head over to Izzy's, except for Davis, who heads off to help Ken, who lives in an area currently under siege. Back in the digital world, Azuramon gives Genki, who is now much younger, a digital core. At the same time, Izzy is receiving emails from a few Digidestin across the world. We also see Ken meet up with Arukenimon and Mummymon. Soon after, David shows up destroying the control spire, allowing both of them to digivolve. While trying to send Triceramon back to the digital world, Mummymon attacks. Back at Izzy's, they discuss what's happening, and Izzy summons Genki. He uses the digital core to force evolve the Digimon, and at the same time, Pyodramon digivolves to Imperialdramon flight mode, as a side effect. So they send Triceramon back to the digital world, and Davis, Ken, and Imperialdramon destroy all the control spires in their area. So we get some world building where tying Data Squad to this season becomes much easier, as Genki and a group of people are working to keep the digital world hidden from the real world. So this team splits up, joining with the Digidestin from across the planet. Before they leave, however, we get a real nice moment between Izzy and his mother. You know, the best parts of this season are those with the old cast. There's zero chance I'm going over everything that happens in Digimon World Tour. I mean, I love this small arc, but it's awesome to see all the new and old cast meet new Digidestin, but nothing much of note happens. They just return Digimon to the digital world. The only real thing of note that happens is Mummymon and Arukenimon start kidnapping children. When they all return home, TK's mother questions him about the Digimon, wanting to know if he has anything to do with them, despite Patamon resting on TK's head. Not very bright, that one. This interaction is also interesting because TK's mother is the only one in the series so far that states the events of Adventure and Adventure 2 are 3 years apart. The rest of the season has incorrectly stated the events are 4 years apart, despite Adventure taking place in August of 1999 and O2 taking place in 2002. She tells TK about Maekawa, and he thinks that this could be Mummymon. We also see Cody question how his father died. We learned that his father passed away protecting a government official, and in the original it's not stated how he died, but in the dub he was shot. Fun fact, even the Yakuza have been known to be too afraid to use guns in Japan due to the penalty they would face. On top of that, I took a look into Japan's gun laws. They're actually pretty reasonable when you take a look at them. So we see Tai and Kari talking about what they're going to have to do to protect people. Unlike the first season where the cast was forced to destroy their enemies, the new cast haven't done that yet, with the only exception being the Digimon made from the power of darkness, being Chimeramon and the Control Spire Digimon. So Ken goes to sleep, and we see his memory where he gets hit with what will come to be known as the Black Spore. I don't like the Black Spores, and we'll get into why when it comes up. The next day, the Digidestin learn about the missing children, and at the same time, we see Digimon start attacking the city. The Digidestin all show up to fight the various Digimon. They all end up together to fight Skull Satomon, who freezes Imperialdramon and takes out all the Ultimate and Champion Digimon without much effort, and threatens to kill a bus full of kids. Izzy comes up with the theory that their Digimon aren't strong enough because they've been in the real world for too long, stating they've never been in the human world for this long. So let's set up a timeline for how long they've been in the human world. They arrived no earlier than noon on Christmas Eve, and that's being generous. Digimon World Tour takes place on Christmas, ending Christmas night in Japan where they started, and this is the next morning, no later than 10 a.m. In Digimon Adventure, they arrive in the human world August 1st between 10 and noon, roughly. We'll say noon to be generous to Adventure 2. The first day they're there, they go to their old neighborhood and take the rest of the day to make it home. The next day is when Gatomon finds Kari, and that night it learns that they are partners. The following morning is when Milosmon takes over, and the final fight begins promptly at 6:06 p.m. August 3rd. 2 days, 6 hours, and 6 minutes later. And the sun is still up during the fight. They don't leave until after the sun has set, which would be at least 7 o'clock. Yes, I looked it up. The thing I'm trying to get across is, if you're going to try and say they haven't been in the real world this long, get your facts straight. I saw this as a problem the first time I watched this season, long before I started looking at any show critically. The difference between the timelines is roughly 6 hours. And even in Adventure, 7 o'clock is when the sun is supposed to set, not when it's all the way down like it is when they leave. Anyway, the Digimon give all their energy to Imperialmon and he switches to fighter mode. While the old team's Digimon barring Gatomon and Patamon return to the digital world, Imperialmon destroys Skull Satamon without any question, and we meet Daemon, who wants the Dark Spore buried in Ken's neck. Arcanemon and Mummymon show up to take Ken, as well as use the kidnapped children as a bargaining chip to convince Ken to come with her. Ken meets Oikawa for the second time, the first time being at Ken's brother's funeral. He reveals that he was the one that originally sent the first email to Ken. After losing the other Digidestin, we learn that all of Ken's abilities come from the Dark Spore that implanted itself in Ken. What it also does is turn the host more malicious. The problem being, it changes the context of the first arc. The original context is that Ken was enslaving Digimon by choice. He wanted to do it because he believed it was a game and didn't realize he was hurting living beings. And now with the Dark Spore, it wasn't his fault. It made him evil, so his actions weren't his own. He shouldn't be blamed for anything. Ken wouldn't have done that otherwise. This is what we call an excuse. The original explanation for Ken's actions was that he did everything because of his pain and loneliness from not being noticed by his family and wanting to outdo his brother. The Dark Spore throws all that out the window. So Oikawa infects the kidnapped children with the Dark Spore, and at the same time the other Digidestin are locked in fights with Lady Devimon and Marine Devimon, while Davis is chasing after Ken. The Digidestin defeat the Digimon, and Yoli is fairly okay with the death of Lady Devimon. Cody is more concerned about the morality of it, claiming it seemed like the right thing to do at the time. Davis catches up with Ken and Oikawa as they are stopped by Daemon. Davis jumps them as soon as Ken is pulled out of the truck, and they DNA Digivolve and start fighting as the others arrive. After digivolving to Imperialdramon, they defeat Daemon and send him to the Dark Ocean, ending a story arc that didn't do much of anything. After returning home, Ken explains the digital world to his parents and introduces them to Wormmon. The next day, the Digidestin try to learn more about Oikawa, and TK's mother gives them the names and addresses of all the kidnapped children who have returned home. They try to speak to the children and are turned away at every corner. And that night, we see Black War Greymon enter the human world. The following day, Black War Greymon seeks out Oikawa, Arcanemon, and Mummymon. Meanwhile, the team splits up watching the children, and Tai and Kari enter the digital world to speak to Agumon and Gabumon. They tell Tai and Kari that Black War Greymon is in the human world, and they go off to fight him. We learn that Black War Greymon wanted to meet Oikawa because he created Arcanemon and Mummymon. He also plans on killing Oikawa because he upsets the balance of the digital world. Tai and Kari show up, stopping Black War Greymon from killing Oikawa, and Agumon digivolves to War Greymon. While the two War Greymons fight, the new Digidestin go after Oikawa. Davis and Ken split off, going to help War Greymon. After the three Megas fight, they discuss life, and Black War Greymon goes off, stating they may one day be friends. The next day, Cody's grandfather finds out about Armadillomon and explains how his father would talk about going to the digital world. Afterwards, Cody takes his watch on one of the children infected with the spores when Oikawa shows up and tries to convince Cody to infect himself with a dark spore. Oikawa also notices the name on Cody's bag and reveals that he knew Cody's father. We learn about Oikawa's past, being an outcast, and how he created Arcanemon and Mummymon. The next morning, Cody asks his grandfather if his father was a good person and states he met Oikawa. We also see Ken following one of the children with the dark spores. She confronts him about why he would give up the dark spore. After the conversation, her spore sprouts into a flower and she gets grabbed by Oikawa, while the Digidestin that have shown up digivolve and try to stop him. Oikawa harvests the flower and gives the girl to the Digidestin. Black War Greymon shows up determined to stop Oikawa, and War Greymon shows up as well. Black War Greymon speaks to Oikawa before Cody's grandfather shows up. We learn more about Oikawa's past, and Cody's grandfather offers his friendship. Oikawa, however, is possessed by another Digimon and attacks Cody's grandfather. Luckily, Black War Greymon jumps in the way. He learns who is possessing Oikawa and uses the last of his power to seal the hole between the two worlds, so Oikawa won't be able to return to the digital world. The kids continue keeping an eye on the children. Oikawa shows up and he tries to open a gate to the digital world, which won't work because Black War Greymon closed it, and Oikawa explains his plan and why Ken was chosen. One thing I like about when he does open the gate is they use the same gate key as in Season 1. when the kids return to the human world, but he uses Agumon's card instead of Gomamon, so we get to see what world the kids could have ended up in. Everyone excluding the old team members enter the new world, and once they realize this isn't the digital world, we meet the Digimon that possessed Oikawa, who is the only other character that correctly states the events of Season 1 happened 3 years earlier. We learn that the one that possessed Oikawa is Myosmon, now Myosmon, Gatomon being the first to recognize his voice. Myosmon starts harvesting the dark spores, and he also kills Arcanimon and Mummymon. XVmon starts fighting Myosmon, who then traps the Digidestin in illusions tailored to the Digidestin's hopes and dreams. We don't get to see Davis's. Either he was the first to realize the dream wasn't real, or he didn't get trapped in one, and TK is the first Digidestin that realizes the truth thanks to Patamon. I do like the Digidestin's dreams. TK wants his family to be together, Yoli wants to be an only child, Cody wants to show his father the digital world, and Kari wants a world where humans and Digimon can exist side by side. The only exception is Ken, who comes face to face with his brother after watching his past self destroyed by the Digimon he harmed. Upon exiting the illusion, they realize that there are 3 versions of Emon, and Davis states that he wished for it. So they all wish for their Digimon to stop Myosmon, and each of their Digimon split into their 3 evolutions, barring Gatomon, who just gets her armor form and ultimate, and Wormmon, who only has Stingmon. Okay, it's awesome. This is the Deus Ex Machina for the season, by the way. During their fight, the champion forms of the Digimon DNA digivolve together, and they end up blasting a hole between the world they're in and the digital world. Upon entering the digital world, they are left with one copy of their Digimon. Myosmon grows more powerful in the digital world and somehow opens a portal to the human world so that he can start spreading his darkness across both worlds. Back in the real world, we see the old team heading back to the summer camp where Season 1 began so they can try and force their way into the digital world. The new team continues to try and stop Myosmon, who proves to be too strong for them. Back in the real world, the Digidestined start holding up their Digivices, which start holding back the darkness, and their Digimon show up to help fight. All the Digidestined enter the digital world, with the old team bringing the child who had a dark spore already harvested from her. After they arrive, the negative emotions from the infected children feed Myosmon's power, and the Digidestined try to reassure the children by telling them not to give up on their dreams. Doing this defeats Myosmon and grants all the children their own Digimon. After destroying Myosmon, Genki shows up returning Gatomon's tail ring, saying it kept the darkness in check and allowed them to DNA digivolve. While Genki is explaining this, Cody helps Oikawa into the digital world. We meet his Digimon, and Oikawa sacrifices himself to help fix and protect the digital world. Afterwards, we jump 15 to 25 years into the future to see how they all turned out. And that's the second season of Digimon. It has many problems, and at first the small problems are just nitpicking. But when you really take a step back to look at the big picture, you start to notice how one small flaw can spiral into a much bigger one. Like with the Dark Spore changing the entire context of the first arc from being Ken's choices to being because of the Dark Spore. Or taking away Patamon and Gatomon's ability to reach Ultimate so they can DNA Digivolve. It's not that I want them to be able to reach Ultimate day 1, it's that the reason behind it feels forced, and there was already a reason as to why they couldn't Digivolve thanks to the control spires. Though it's not all that bad. Rewatching this season this time, I realized how much Ty's team had to do with the early season and the late season. And every time they appeared, I found that the series' strengths showed through. I also found myself really enjoying certain characters more, like Cody. Before this watch through, I found Cody to be little more than the kid that has to prove himself due to early episodes like when they find Samarimon's Digi-Egg. But in reality, he is more the calm look at the big picture type of character with an honorable personality. The type of person that puts others first before himself. It's one of the reasons why I think Cody and Yoli should swap the Digi-Egg of love and knowledge. Adventure 2 is not a bad season. It's riddled with flaws, yes, but many of those flaws come from executive meddling or writer infighting. Plots like the Dark Ocean are left to the wayside, coming up from time to time, but are left mostly in shadow as a person who wanted to tell a story using it left to work on Tamers. There are great episodes in here like Ghost of a Chance that brings back Wizardmon one last time, A Very Digi Christmas, and Digimon World Tour, Genesis of Evil where we learn about Ken's backstory. I don't even have much of a problem with the characters. Yeah, Davis can get annoying, Yoli can be just as loud and obnoxious, and Cody is monotone for most of the season, causing some scenes with him to drag on, but that isn't necessarily a bad thing. The problem does come from the logical problems that contradict Season 1. The Digidestined giving up their crest despite it being a part of them. The Digimon not being able to stay in the human world because they get weaker the longer they stay, despite staying longer than 2 days back in Season 1. I stated before that I am biased when I talk about Digimon. While there are problems in this season, I do end up enjoying my time when I watch this season. If I didn't, I would have made it a yearly tradition to binge watch the first 3 seasons. There is more good than bad here, especially in the moments when the kids take time to just sit down and talk, when they aren't fighting to save the digital world. But what do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. I try to talk to people who leave comments, and I read every comment I get. Also, if you enjoyed this video, it would help out a lot if you guys would like the video, subscribe, and share it with anyone who might also enjoy it. Oh, and I'm switching gears next time to talk about Steven Universe Future, and then I'll be back for Tamers.